In this video, we are going to discuss the topic 7 for practice. So the first slide that you have today is how to find the GCF of a number if you have 2 terms or 3 terms at home. So we will use this for like slide 4 through maybe 8. Here is just a friendly reminder of what the rules are, okay? And this hint right here, the calculator won't tell you. You have to know that. It says if the first term is negative, the GCF will be negative. If the first term is positive, then the GCF will be positive. So please be aware of that. And another thing that the calculator won't do, whether it's on Desmos or the Inspire, is it won't tell you about the variables. So if all terms have the same base, then the base with the smallest exponent will be the GCF. So actually, let me see if it works here. So GCD, which it does, 190, comma 350. Nope, it doesn't. That's a bummer. So you can copy and paste it. If you go back to slide 1, there we are. It will tell you that it's 10. So the greatest common factor of 190 and 350 is 10. Here, it's 3 numbers. So you can just keep adding this if you want. GCD 200, then comma GCD again, and then you want to put the last 2 numbers. So for example, 345 and then 566. And here the greatest common factor is 1. So even though it's 1, we still have to write it as 1. That's actually a really important rule that we're going to talk about. Now for this problem, we can't do it in the calculator, but if you need to write it out in expanded form, please do so. So x to the 7th is really 7 x's being multiplied together, and x to the 4th is really 4 of them. So together, you want to see how many they share, and they share 4. Now, if you write 4 into Desmos, 4 is not going to work. What you want to do is write x to the 4th power, because x times x times x times x is really written as this right here, x to the 4th. Same thing here. It doesn't matter the order. Some of you try to put in x to the 6. You want to look at the exponent. I have a 7, I have a 4, and now I have a 6. So the smallest exponent is 4, so it's x to the 4th. Now on slide number 8, this is where you have to combine slides 4 through 7. We are not only talking about the numbers, but now we're talking about the variables as well. So to find the greatest common factor of just the numbers, you put that into the calculator. And when you do, I believe it's 2, so we'll check that out in a minute. Then you have to look at the variables. They all 3 have variables. They all have x's. You want to look at the smallest exponent. That will be the one that you have to divide out. So x to the 3rd. So together, in my case, my red, which is 2, and then my purple, which is talking about the variables, has to go together. Now, slide 9, this is where some of you guys were confused, but you have to remember the first term is negative. So there are my coefficients. here is my x's. Now, if you look, if you do the GCD, the calculator is going to tell you, or GCF rather, the calculator is going to say 7. But because this first term is negative, it's truly a negative 7. And then you want to look at the smallest exponent. There's really a 1 here. So it's only sharing 1x. So together, it's really negative 7x. Now, the nice thing about slide 10, you got to be really mindful here. We have an 8, we have a 14, and we have an 8. But if I write the variables in purple like I did before, what about 18? 18 doesn't have a variable to give. So the nice thing about this is we are only going to care about, I'm writing it wrong, I'm sorry. We are only going to care about the number. So the greatest common factor of 8, 14, and 18 is 2. We can't look at the x's because if I wrote 5 x's here and 2 x's here, there is none to share. Since there's none to share, we can't do anything with it. Now slide 11, this is when we start doing all of it. This is where you have to start showing work. So work is needed. And work is only needed for the bottom part. So you're going to do the same thing that you've done in the last, 7 slides. You're going to find the GCF of 2, 18, and 6, which is 2. And then x to the 4th, x squared, and x. So then it's just 2x. So the work that I need to see for this slide is to actually write down the given problem. And then we already identified the greatest common factor as 2x. So when we are asking for a factored form, that means we have a GCF on the outside of parentheses. And we're going to actually divide the GCF by each term. And when we divide, what is left goes here inside the parentheses. So you want to look at it individually. So I'm going to have to write the GCF on the outside. I'm going to start my parentheses. And then my first term. My first term is 2 divided by 2, which is 1. Now it's very helpful to put the 1 next to the x so you can visualize what's happening. So x to the 4th divided by x to the 1, we subtract the exponent. So we're going to get x to the 3rd. And then on the next term, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to actually divide the coefficients, 18 divided by 2. And that's going to get me a positive 9. And then when you divide the same base, you're going to subtract the exponent. So 2 minus 1 is 1. Just a friendly reminder, I did not code the 1, so it's just regular 9x. And then lastly, positive 6 divided by 2 is a positive 3. X divided by x is technically x to the 0. So we don't have to write that. It just is 3. So the coefficient now becomes just the constant. So I want you to make some connections here. I started with 3 terms, and in my parentheses, I got 3 terms. So that's going to be helpful in the upcoming slides. So now we're going to do the same thing. In your calculator or on slide 1, you're going to type in GCD 24 comma GCD, and then 48 comma negative 66. So I'm going to do that on my own calculator. And then the GCF is 6. But now you have to look at the variables. We have x to the third, we have x squared, and we have x. The most they share is just an x. So this is where the work needs to come from. We have to write out the trinomial that was given. Sometimes it's going to be a binomial. And then you are going to divide it by your GCF. So we found the GCF to be 6x. So I'm going to write 6x, and then I'm going to have parentheses. Now the parentheses is what is left over when you actually divide. So 24x to the third divided by 6x to the first is going to be 4, and then x squared, because you minus the exponents. 48 divided by 6 will be a positive 8. X squared divided by x to the first, we subtract the exponents. And then lastly, we have negative 11, and then the x's go away. So altogether, we have this trinomial that is left over. Uh, 13, you're going to do the same, but you want to be mindful. When you type this in, the calculator is going to give you 5. However, our negative is our first term, so it's going to be negative 5. Now I want you to look at the x's. We have x squared and we have x. 30 does not have an x, so we are not allowed to take out an x. So our GCF is just going to be negative 5. Now if I wrote down the trinomial, this is the work that I need to see. My GCF is just negative 5. Now I look at the term. Negative 15 divided by negative 5 is a positive 3. But notice I'm not dividing anything with the x squared. So that means I just drop it down. If I started with it, I have to at least finish with it. And then negative 10x divided by negative 5 is a positive 2x. And then lastly, a positive 30 divided by negative 5 is going to be a minus 6. On slide 14, I'm going to want you to try that one on your own. Slide 15, you can try on your own as well. Just a friendly reminder that this is a negative 45. So on slide 1, if you type in GCD negative 45 comma 80, it will only give you the positive version, but since the leading term is negative, it needs to be a negative. Now slide 17, it's kind of like 3 parts that you have to take care of. You need to do the GCD of 21. Then you need to do the GCD of x, and then you need to do the GCD of y. So for just the numbers, if you put this in slide 1, it's going to be a positive 7. So we got that taken care of. Now if you look at the x's, I have x to the 5th, I have x to the 3rd, and I have x squared. So the most I can take out is x squared. And now you have to look at the y's. So I have y to the 3rd, another y squared, and a y. The most they share is a y. So you have to kind of look at that in 3 different parts. So this is going to be the GCF. And we're going to have to take that into, we're going to have to divide every single part. See how organized the board is on my computer? This is how organized your paper should be as well. Also notice how I'm lining up the X's on top of each other and the Y's as well. That is just to be clarified, to make it easier for you. So 21 divided by 7 is 3. X to the 5th divided by x squared, we subtract the exponents. And now we have to look at the y's. Y to the 3rd divided by y to the 1st is y squared. Negative 14 divided by 7 is minus 2. X to the 3rd divided by x to the 1st is x squared. Y squared divided by, actually, hold on, I made a mistake. So this is a common mistake. See how this is x squared? This needs to be x squared too, and so does that. So x to the 3rd divided by x squared is actually just regular x. So you don't need that exponent. Y squared divided by y to the 1st is just y. And then the last term, a positive 49 divided by 7 is 7. X squared over x squared becomes x to the 0. We don't need to write it. Y divided by y is y to the 1st, y to the 0, and you don't need to write that as well. So when you're doing this, make sure you're as precise as possible so you don't make any mistakes like I just did. 18 is very similar. And then 19 is trying to show you how it is related to your assessment yesterday. So what I recommend doing on your paper is writing down the trinomial given, but in fact it's negative 12. And then x to the 5th, x to the 4th, x to the 3rd, you have x to the 3rd. You can check your answers as you go. So then once you divide out negative x to the 3rd on each part, then you want to actually divide like we've done. So negative 36x to the 5th divided by negative 12x to the 3rd gets me a positive 3, and then x squared. Negative 24 divided by negative 12 is a positive 2. And then subtract the exponents. 12x to the 3rd divided by 12x to the 3rd is a positive 1. So far, we just have to be careful. 12 divided by a negative 12 is actually negative 1. So please be mindful. So our GCF is what is written on the left side of our box or area model. And then the terms that are on top, that's going to be our answer altogether. Now slide 20 and 21 are very similar. On slide 22, you will need to upload your work.